Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I am here with Taylor Johnson, and he is going to be talking to us about sexual mastery, specifically for men. He is a men's sex coach, and when I was considering who I wanted to be on this episode, because I knew that it was so important to talk about this topic today, to support divine union, to support the healing of the man-woman relationship, and to really deepen in sexuality that supports our enlightenment, our healing, our spiritual awakening, and deeper connection between the man-woman relationship. Taylor came across my field a few times. And so, Taylor, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for being here today. And I invite you to introduce yourself a bit further as you feel called.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, listener, or if you're watching on YouTube, for showing up for this. I'll just do the short intro. I am where I am today because I used to really struggle with sex in my early and mid 20s. Like, I struggled with all the challenges, like premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, porn addiction, sexual anxiety, low self-worth as a man, like feeling kind of like like a scam or fake, or just shitty about myself, because this whole area of my life was a complete mess. And I went on a big journey of reading all the books I could find, doing all the workshops I could take on this topic, like to try to figure out how to actually have good sex. I decided at one point, like, I have to know what it's like to have good sex in my life. And through the journey of learning how to actually overcome all these dysfunctions to have good sex, I also realized, wow, this is actually improving every area of my life, including my friendships, my family relationships, but also my business and my ability to make more money. And like, wow, there's a reason people have been writing books about this stuff. It's not just fairy tale kind of woo-woo stuff. It actually works. And I was blown away, and eventually started to talk more and more and more and more and more about it. Started at Instagram, started at YouTube, and then realized, like, hey, people actually want to talk about this stuff. So I took trainings on how to actually help people with this. And fast forward even more, here we are today. But it came from my own struggle, really. Yeah. For context, I even went through an extended period of time of avoiding women completely, because I was afraid of the moment when we might eventually be sexual together and it would become the disaster that it had regularly been. So that's where I have come from. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing so openly, honestly, vulnerably. I'm sure some men can really relate. And even men who maybe can't, maybe with a part of your story, like even with the pornography addiction or things like this, which is a big issue in our society today that creates a big amount of disconnection. And we are going to have episodes that really go in depth. And so what I really want to focus on today is the power of our sexual energy, both for men and women, and how that its true intention has and was for our spiritual evolution, for awakening higher energy centers. And of course, it's for pleasure. And unfortunately, in society, it's been weaponized. It's been suppressed to the point of creating dysfunction, right? We think of religion, we think of the church, and then we think of how it's been monopolized and created as a business with pornography and even prostitution. And then we see sex trafficking. So it's such a powerful energy that when we
focus it, we direct it, we know how to run the energies in our body, as with Tantra, for example, and different types of breath works, energy practices as well, that we can use it also for our creation and our health. I know as a medical doctor, it's like a prescription for healing as well. When we have stagnant energies in the body, specifically if our sexual energy is stuck down in our lower energy centers, this can create a lot of blockages even for the organs. And I've always loved, practitioners like Montauk Chia, and he's written books in tandem with other medical doctors to show how it actually helps our health. And so how you said it really helped your whole entire life. And so it helps our energy levels and all that. And so that's kind of like the preface. And one of the most powerful things that men can do to be more energized, to be more connected to their women, to their one woman, not like all the women, and is to really learn to focus this energy. And I go as far to say is learn to practice semen retention as a lifestyle. And I think it's so important to hear it from a man, because of course, when a woman, a tantrika woman is like, oh, I'd really love if you don't ejaculate, a man's like, what? And knowing that, I think it's extremely sexy when a man focuses sexual energy and does not ejaculate. To me, it shows discipline, it shows power, it shows focus. But some women don't even know this. And some women really want their man to ejaculate, thinking like, yes, I got him to ejaculate. And so I would love to hear from you, Taylor, as a man and someone who has struggled in your past with sexuality. Tell us the benefits of why it's such a good idea for men to practice semen retention and why their women would benefit as well from it.
All right. I will, but I'll share first. There were a lot of points that you brought up there. It feels important for me to say that I'm not a semen retention evangelist. Like, I don't go around trying to convince people to do this practice. I don't think that's useful, actually. And I think it can sometimes, create more shame or disconnection or dissonance. So what I like to do when I talk to guys is just ask them a simple question like, are you satisfied with your sex life? Are you satisfied with your life in general? And are you not just satisfied, but are you happy with these things? Is your relationship happy with these things? If you and your partner and your life are great and you're totally satisfied, like, who am I to say that you need to try anything different? Like, that's what I honestly believe, And if there are some areas of your life, your sex life, perhaps your business life, your concentration, your overall levels of motivation, zest, clarity, like any number of things that are tricky for you, then I would start to ask some questions. And eventually we would get into your sexual habits, because our sexual choices do have a big impact on the rest of our life. Like, how often are you ejaculating? What's the context in which you are ejaculating? Are you doing it to porn? Are you masturbating and ejaculating to fantasy? Are you making sure you're fully embodied in the experience? So from that point, if a man is curious about the things that could impact all of those things in his life, then we would have a conversation about this. And yes, it is true that I have found, and I've talked to many men who have found that being more intentional with their sexual choices and ejaculation frequency has really improved their life, their business life, their relationship, etc. So like there's lots of benefits to this lifestyle. And it is a lifestyle because the traditions that this came from, they would never say just stop ejaculating and think your life would improve. No, it's a full on holistic look at how you're spending your energy, both sexually, mentally, relationally, in your life in general. Like, I like to use the analogy, how do you mentally ejaculate away your attention through different things like, smartphone use and social media and all this stuff too, because that's analogous to what we're doing with our sexual energy. So I could keep going on a tangent there, but I'm going to pause to see what direction would feel useful for you right now.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. And because I call myself a multidimensional activator, I am more of a provocative type of activator, where I tend to awaken people to ways of being, embodying, and living that they never even thought of before. So, for
Totally.
example, there may be a man who is satisfied with his life, and he has a business and he has a great relationship, and he's looking for that next level, or maybe he doesn't even know he's looking for it. And so I still feel that it's beneficial for all men to practice it, really. Like, I don't think there's anyone it's contraindicated for. I think that all people in general would benefit from being more intentional and conscious about how they focus energy, like you said, both our mental energy as well as our sexual energy.
Totally.
And we, even if our sex life is great, the places that we can go when we get into the realms of Tantra. Now I'm realizing maybe I should have another episode where I go more into Tantra and what that's about. And that's like a whole, it's like, imagine you learned a new sport, right? So there's this whole
Totally.
place we can go to with sex. And I feel that the gateway, even before someone gets into Tantra, learning about semen retention, both as the woman to support our partner and also as the man, even learning about edging and learning about how we can even enhance pleasure through the practice, pleasure as well as energy levels through the practice of semen retention, while we're also having intercourse, not just the practice of not ejaculating, because you can, of course, orgasm without an ejaculation.
For sure. Which brings up the other like part of it, which is like, hey, if you want to be having amazing sex and perhaps things that you had never even conceived of as possible, like that is a direction you could go as well too. So I 100% hear what you're saying. I just like to be cautious and intentional because there's so much right now in the influencer world, the internet, of like women saying men should do this, men saying women should do this, and everyone shooting on each other, and a lot of like shame and a lot of hate being thrown around for people not doing the things that everyone else thinks everyone else should be doing. And it's a tricky time, in my opinion. So it's important to me to be intentional. And I will also say, yes, like you can have an orgasm without ejaculating. You can have a sexual like peak pleasure experience that sustains for longer than 7 seconds of the typical ejaculatory orgasm. In my opinion, that's worth exploring. You know, even if you are very satisfied with your sex life, it should ignite a curiosity of, ooh, what's possible? Really? You mean I can experience orgasm for a minute straight and then not feel depleted afterwards? Holy shit, like I'd like to try that. So
Yeah.
there's that aspect of it too, you know, the pleasure potential. And what I would say is that when I first started on my journey to overcome my challenges, I did hear about this thing of separating orgasm from ejaculation. And I thought it was just marketing BS, honestly. I figured like, oh, people are just using this to try to sell books and courses and all this stuff, because that's so far removed from my reality. I can't even have sex for longer than like 4 minutes, you know, at this time in my life, right? So the prospect of that was totally unfathomable. Fast forward a number of years and I started to experience it, and it did blow me away. Like there's an episode on my podcast, if you want to hear the full story about the first time I had an extended non-ejaculatory orgasm. I go into detail about how it happened and the feelings of it and all that. It would take too long to go into right now, but just suffice to say, it did happen for me, and then it has happened, and it's something that I've cultivated, and it's amazing. And I also want to say, I still think that ejaculatory orgasms are a very healthy and beautiful part of being a sexual man, just learning to have them with intention at a frequency that is ideal for your age and your lifestyle. And there are actually ways to do that that doesn't deplete you also. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so one other context, I agree with everything you said. And one other context I want to share is this season of the podcast is specifically around healing the man-woman relationship for greater union. So it is about the realization of this higher level of relationship that's more like spiritual partnership, that is in support of supporting each of our greatest evolution as well as our missions in the world. So that being said, with that context, having the lifestyle of being more mindful about when ejaculation happens to support a man's energy for his mission, as well as to support the energy between the couple to keep more heart-centered connection. So in that context, then we would invite couples that wish to realize that level of relationship to practice this type of sexuality.
Yeah. And it's also not the only answer. You can have a relationship with a man practices semen retention where there's discord and tension in the relationship. I've experienced that. I'm human too. Yeah, I've been through extended periods of time in relationship where the relationship is rocky and I'm still doing this practice. But what I actually need to do is focus more on being able to be real about my emotions and to communicate about them effectively. That's something that isn't directly touched by just not ejaculating for 7 days, so
Yeah,
other part of the picture. Yeah,
totally. And there's other episodes where we talk all about feeling
totally.
emotions.
I
So
bet.
this
I bet.
we're like adding pieces to the puzzles.
Yeah,
This
totally.
puzzle piece is more about the sexual
For
mastery.
sure. And this is why, I mean, this is honestly why sex is so interesting to me too. Because yes, there's so much pleasure potential, and it touches on all these deep aspects of what it means to be human, what it means to love and be loved and be in relationship. It's all connected like this beautiful web. Because sex doesn't just live in a little box in our genitals, of course. And then you have all these other episodes, so we can keep talking about sex. But I just wanted to say that I think it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it's a beautiful thing. And I do think that the context, because this is about more sacred sexuality as well, where I do think a lot of ways that we can have sex that most couples are not having sex is that we can use it as a space to process emotions, and we can bring the emotions into the space of intercourse where you could be like crying and having sex. Like you could be feeling a contraction in your body. And then while the intercourse is happening, allow the energies to go there and process. And you can have so much emotional release in the context of sacred sex. And it doesn't look like
Yeah.
the movie kind of sex or the pornography kind of sex. It looks very different.
Yeah.
And it's equally powerful, and it really serves as a healing container. That's so amazing.
Totally. And then you can also have the kind of sex that looks like porn when you have that sort of deep connection with somebody and it's consensual and intentional too. The whole spectrum becomes available.
Yeah.
But I will say,
Important to say too, of
yeah,
like, it's important to say that we're not saying to only have this kind of sex. That it is good to have a quickie in the kitchen. It is good to, like, wherever you are, suddenly decide that you want to go for it. And then also being mindful, like you said, based on age, frequency of ejaculation, and then deciding like, okay, this is the session where you're going to,
Yeah.
and then of course sometimes it just happens, and that's okay too. It's
Yeah.
like all of it together.
Totally. Well, I'll give you a personal example. So I just turned 40 a couple of weeks ago, and for my lifestyle, my ideal ejaculation frequency is once every 10 to 12 days. If I stay at that frequency, and that's based on some different Taoist perspectives and my own personal practice and experimentation, if I stay at that level, then I have a sustained, we'll just call it, I have a sustained higher level of clarity, a sustained higher level of motivation, zest for making things happen in the world. My ability to have conversations and say useful things remains great. If I start reducing that frequency and say like 2 or 3 times within that time period, really if it starts to get like 3 times or more during that time period, then I notice there's a substantial drop in my desire to get shit done, just to say it bluntly, and I could still do manual labor and I'm still strong and I can still work, of course, but there's a spark of ingenuity that's missing. There's a spark of inventiveness that's missing for me. And I think that's the thing that most people don't realize is possible here, because so many of us, and myself included, I have to regularly practice this. So many of us are like addicted to our devices and phones and technology and notifications, and our consciousness is being pulled on constantly by all these things in society. So there's a level of awareness that takes practice to even realize when our abilities to be inventive and creative are reduced, So does that make sense what I just said?
It does. And just, I want to put it a little bit more in like direct terms. So
Great.
if any of you men or ladies, if you observe your man being a bit lazy or a procrastinator, or he seems to be struggling with his mission or finding new solutions to situations or things happening within business or his career, it could serve him to ejaculate less, is basically what we're saying. It would support the mission, support energy levels, support innovation, support problem solving, and mental capacity. And I feel like I even can tell, and I notice when a guy is masturbating a lot or ejaculating a lot, because to me, their eyes look a little sleepy.
Hmm.
And whereas when I know that men are a bit more conscious and practicing semen retention, it's like I see their eyes brighter and almost like more light in their eyes. And so maybe this is just the way I'm seeing the energy. I don't know if every woman has the same experience, especially women who are sensitive to these things. But it's almost like they're also able to hold the contact and be more present. I find there's a higher level of presence with men who are not ejaculating so much. And we also know, like studies show that after a man ejaculates, he wants to retreat and go and be by himself so that he can replenish his testosterone levels. And so I feel, is it also true that testosterone levels stay higher the less a man ejaculates?
So that's an area of a lot of conversation and contention, and different studies are saying different things. And there are some older studies that say testosterone experiences a jump 7 days after ejaculation and 21 days after ejaculation. There are also studies that say testosterone levels don't significantly change after ejaculation. And so there are a lot of other hormones, neurochemicals, processes happening physiologically and in the brain that are occurring, right? And we might not be able to identify specifically which ones there are. Subjectively, it is the experience of most guys. After you ejaculate, you don't want to keep having sex. You don't want to do much of anything, right? You have succeeded in procreating, at least biologically speaking. You can now rest, take your congratulatory meal. Most guys can relate to that. I'd say 99.5% of guys can relate to that. What most guys don't realize is that often extends for multiple days in subtle ways beyond the period of that one ejaculation. So that's something to be aware of. And I will say, you made a point that I want to clarify. There are two different kinds of guys who are not ejaculating. And one of them probably doesn't have the same sort of look of zest in their eyes, right? And one of them does. There's a lot of guys out there who are just not having sex, who don't feel sexually empowered, who are not ejaculating because they're, I don't know, maybe whatever reason, right? Maybe they're not exercising, they're not pursuing people, they're caught up in any number of things, right? And so that's different from the men who are intentionally cultivating their sexual energy, who realize that this is a useful force in their life, and they're doing more than just not ejaculating, right? You said earlier, I think this is something every guy could do. And I would say, yes, if they realize that you have to also do things to work with this buildup of energy that happens. If you do that, then it can be successful. If you just ejaculate less without doing something like martial arts or qigong or yoga or some sort of intentional internal cultivation of the charge, it's going to set you up for problems, actually. So then it can be counterindicative for people who don't work with it. There's some guys who if you look out on the internet space, you'll see guys saying things like, well, I stopped ejaculating for 30 days and my life didn't improve. And I'm like, okay, did you just stop ejaculating? What else did you do? They're like, no, I just stopped ejaculating. Okay, that's not how it works,
Yeah, that's why, just so everyone knows, that's why we called it a lifestyle. Because there are certain types of breathwork techniques like microcosmic orbit and different tantric breathworks where we want to move. Remember, we talked about in the beginning where that if that energy gets stuck and stagnant down there, it doesn't use its maximum potential, which is we want to allow it to rise to our higher energy centers, which feed other capacities and abilities that we have as humans, that you could say are superhuman abilities, which all people have.
Yeah.
And so part of this work is about learning to move. It's life force. You're moving life force energy to other parts of the body, which improves your health, improves your energy levels, and awakens spiritual gifts. One other thing I wanted to add about where you talked about the refractory time after having an ejaculation. So these podcast episodes are about supporting greater union. if you're in a relationship and you're ejaculating a lot, your woman is going to feel that separation energy from you. So if you're in a relationship and you have low libido, it's going to support you to feel like you want to have more sex more often the less you're ejaculating, because like we just talked about, there could be even days that you're feeling this refractory period. And then, you know, as women, we're very sensitive. We can feel the pull away. And so it is going to support greater union, both because you're going to want to have more sex and more physical union together. And then two, from the energetics and not feeling that need to withdraw to replenish your neurochemicals and hormones in the body.
I want to give just a simple practice that anybody can do. This is about as baseline as it gets, but most people don't even consider this as an option. Think about, probably most people listening have gotten a professional massage at some point in their life, right? And we all know most of the benefits of that. It helps your nervous system relax, helps your muscles feel good, helps your mind relax. Usually in a professional massage, people are not massaging your inner groin and your genitals. I think that's unfortunate, actually.
And go to like the Chinese places and like happy ending.
Right. Yeah, but so here's the twist on that, though.
It's just a joke.
Yeah, for sure. And these areas of our body, our genital areas, when do they get touched for the sake of health without attachment to outcome? Right? So this is a question for the guys in here. When was the last time your penis, your testicles, your genital region has been touched for the sake of health without the desire for performance, without the desire for erection or sexual function to get your partner off to experience pleasure? It's probably years or never for most of us. So one thing guys can start doing is, and I like to do this in the shower or sometimes before I go to bed, sometimes when I wake up in the morning, is just a simple non-sexual genital self-massage, like massaging my inner groin, massaging my testicles, massaging my penis, and making sure I get everything from like the tip down to the base, the root of the penis and where the penis goes into the bottom. You can feel the anatomy of that actually going a little bit into your body. And what this does is multiple things. One, it starts to create the mind-body connection that says, hey, this part of the body is important and worthy of health and worthy of celebration too, which will just have a whole variety of positive effects. And also it'll help blood flow in the region. And also, interestingly, if you look at some of the different esoteric perspectives, they have what's called sexual reflexology. And you've probably heard of this with feet, right? Like different points on the feet correspond to different points on the body in various traditions. Well, on the penis, it's similar. And on the root of the penis, around the inch and a half or so that's closest to the body, that is correlated, at least in terms of Taoist reflexology, with your kidneys, which are the things that are said to be the storehouses of your sexual energy. And this is a really interesting thing. So if you massage that area of your body, if you make sure to massage the root of your penis in this self-massage, in these traditions, they could say, oh, it will increase your sexual capacity. What does that mean? This is one of the cool areas where Western research has actually caught up with Eastern esoteric philosophy. And it shows that people who masturbate with their penis, including the root of their penis in their masturbation sessions, it actually trains them to last longer during sex without worrying about ejaculating as much. It gives people more freedom to experience more pleasure without the pressure of ejaculating. To me, that's very cool. Like, these esoteric traditions have been saying this for generations, and the Western world sees this as useful now. So that's a technique I think every guy could do a couple times a week. And again, it could turn into a self-pleasure session, but that's not the goal. Just do it for a few minutes here and there to start to cultivate the positive relationship with your genitals, and just watch the ripple effect that it'll have on your life and relationships.
Absolutely. And for ladies, I would invite you to invite your man to receive a healing massage from you, where you don't give him a happy ending, but you very thoroughly go through and massage all the parts of his genitals, you start with the inner thighs and you work all around. You do the root, the base where the perineum is, and you work your way, and you imagine as if you wanted to give love to every part of his genitals, his penis, his shaft, the balls, everything, and the scrotum, and even really like working through the skin of the scrotum. And I even like to add an energetic layer where I just visualize my hands and the genitals wrapped in golden light. And this is so healing, this is so nourishing, and it's going to support him to support you so that he can last longer, and so he's not ejaculating prematurely or as often, and just giving that love. And it's a way that you can use that time together as well. So it's not something he has to do on his own, though of course he can, but you can also do that. And then vice versa, though this episode is focusing mainly on men and semen retention, but as I mentioned in another episode, that a man can do that similarly to a woman, and the same reflexology points, the women have the matching points, so it's like a lock and key fit with penis and vagina. So internal vaginal massage is also really healing and powerful to for a woman to do for herself, but also to receive from her man.
For sure. Yeah. And if you're a man who's practicing semen retention as a lifestyle, the self-massage helps with the ability to circulate the energy as well, and not just let it build up in the genital region. Yeah, just add that point.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So inside the bonus content, we're going to go a bit deeper and share some beginner tips if you want to start to learn how to separate your ejaculation from your orgasm, as well as share some of the recommendations for age in terms of how often is good to ejaculate as well. And so we invite you inside the bonus content. And Taylor, I would love for you to share with everyone where they can connect with you further, your website or anything else you want to share before we close out this main episode.
Yeah. Well, I haven't really been posting on Instagram in over a year. I've got an interesting learning relationship with that, trying to figure out where I want to be intentional with my creative energy as well. I am most excited about my podcast recently. I've had some great guests on there. It's called Sex Upgraded. And so that's where I would send people for now. Like, check out my podcast if you want to hear some wild stories and interesting and useful techniques as well, both for myself and then a whole variety of guests.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll include the link for all of you to make it easy as well in the comment section.
Awesome. Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Taylor. I loved this conversation, and we will see you inside the bonus content. Thank you so much for being here, and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.